Had some news with the Sixers today, as Ace Bailey was supposed to be here today to meet with Sixers brass and then work out tomorrow. It was canceled by the Ace Bailey camp, and with us to talk about it is the People's Insider, Jake Fischer, born and bred Philadelphia. Jake, how we doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, man. How are you? It's an honor to be here as always.
Oh, listen to him, Jack.
Buttering us up.
You can subscribe.
No, man. Yeah. Listen to the intro track coming back from commercial takes me back to being in the car as a kid. It always does. It always does.
There you go.
We'll grill you on Moshe later, but we got important things to get to.
Yeah, we have some Moshe questions later. By the way, you can subscribe to Jake's writing. Jake works with Mark Stein, legend, there at markstein.substack.com. Definitely, if you are into rumors, if you like the NBA and you're into rumors, that is a good place to be. So, big story today is that there had been some whispers about Ace Bailey only working out for certain teams, blah, 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 blah. And then the Sixers schedule the meeting for him to come in today and the workout tomorrow canceled. So, as best as you can tell, why did he make the meeting and then cancel the meeting?
To be honest, there does not seem to be a sensical reason as to why this has all unfolded, because the only savvy chicanery agenting that would be behind this that would make sense is if you have a promise somewhere else in the top 5, top 6, wherever your range that you're comfortable with, and you have that secured and you just want to make sure you try to clear the way and do what you can to get to that spot. But we have not heard he's worked out anywhere else. And from all my conversations around the league, I don't think he's locked in at Charlotte. I don't think he's locked in at number 5 with Utah. And there's some serious questions about even if the Washington Wizards would be a home for him, or even the New Orleans Pelicans down at 7. So I could be completely in the dark, but there is no word right now that Ace Bailey actually has a spot. And I don't really understand what the strategy here is. I really don't.
Yeah, there was some talk that he wanted to go somewhere where he could sort of thrive. I guess the idea being that he wouldn't want to go to a contender. He would want to go to a team where he would be able to be featured more. It just doesn't seem like it makes any sense to not work out at all. It's not like he is everybody knew Cooper Flagg is a locked-in player, right, at number 1.
Sure.
You don't go and work out for teams unless you know, when Markelle Fultz came and worked out for the Sixers, unfortunately, he knew they were going to take him at 1. So if you are a guy trying to increase your stock, it would seem that any meeting you could have and any positive workout you could have would only make your stock go up, right?
I would agree. And I think there's always been some type of, what agents can try to maneuver things and figure out exactly how to get your star to a spot. But when you look at Ace Bailey in particular, the shot selection is a bit questionable to teams. He doesn't have as much on-ball creation stuff that you would want in a, surefire top, franchise-changing guy. So when you put it at Philly, obviously that situation isn't there. He's going to be behind Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey at a minimum. Charlotte, that team is pretty much run through LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller right now. Utah has the vacuum and has the opportunity for any prospect to come in there. They have not hit on a guy in the last however long this rebuild you want to call it with Utah is. Same thing with Washington. In theory, there's no clear-cut number 1 option there. But it doesn't seem like teams are even looking at him to be that type of player anyway. I haven't heard scouts talk about him nearly in the breadth of Cooper, of Dillon, or even just a general someone who you're going to bring in and think that this guy is going to be potentially one day the best player on a championship team.
Jake Fischer with us. Jake Fischer, the People's Insider. You can find more of Jake's writing at Mark Stein's website. Just Google Mark Stein. It's right there. So let me ask you 2 Sixers-related questions based on the decision that Ace Bailey made. If you're the Sixers, if you were going to take him, do you think this affects whether they would take him or not?
No. At the end of the day, I think Daryl Morey is the type of I will go against the green thinker type guy to just pick the prospect that he wants no matter what. That being said, I think with Philly, this is such a weird spot, being that you very rarely see teams trade out of the top 3 pick. And you also very rarely see a top 3 pick immediately contribute to a championship caliber rotation and roster. And that is, of course, what the Sixers hope this group will be when everyone is theoretically back healthy next season. Those are big ifs and big theories. But if that is the outcome, that's what obviously is the North Light and the guiding star of what Daryl and that group is trying to achieve throughout all their offseason roster work and whatnot. I don't think you take the project guy. I do think you want someone who has more of a clear cut. We see him translating and contributing in some degree right now. Like, you're kind of trying to have to split the baby in thinking about this group long term, knowing the concerns that Joel might not be healthy, and then you have a bigger question on your hands. But in the event that you are a top of the Eastern Conference team, you do want someone who can help you right now. And I don't know if that's Ace Bailey.
Jake, how real is the Paul George rumors out there? Like, do you think on opening night he's going to be a Sixer?
I do. I've never gotten any credible word that Philly's actually talking about him in trade rumors. We've written that the last little stretch here on the Stein Line. And I think also, I don't know how Daryl can come around with giving, Mike Levin a cap space jersey on the rights to Ricky Sanchez, and
he did,
then come back to ownership the next year and say, you know what, my bad, that wasn't the right call. I should also still be the person, leading this organization. I don't think you can just about face on your absolute, like, this is the most direct path to a championship decision in 11 months. I don't really see that as something that, like, that's not Orlando moving off of KCP, for example, very quickly, putting all their chips in to go get Desmond Bane. That is the top free agent on the board that you cleared all this cap space for, that you potentially, it didn't have any near outcome, but you potentially, tricked up Tyrese Maxey's extension to delay the space. All this for Paul George and only Paul George. I don't think you can just snap your fingers and about face so quickly like that.
Well, certainly, unless they are getting a better player than Paul George. I think the question,
sure,
the thing that people are asking about is, would they do it just to rid themselves of the contract? And that seems incredibly unlikely to me at this point.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. Could they, in theory, call up Utah and try to see if a Paul George for Lauri Markkanen thing exists? I saw that got reported somewhere. Sure. I just don't see why Utah would do that. I don't see why. Like, I don't think there's options out there. Like, same thing. We talked about the Memphis deal. People started texting me right after that trade, like, oh, well, who's Memphis going to go out and trade all that stuff for? Like, probably someone like Desmond Bane. Like, there aren't that many players, I think, on the board that you could turn Paul George into that make you so much better. I'm sure someone listening in the car is screaming, Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant, Kevin Durant. Do you really want to go after KD after all the stuff that's been plaguing this team? Like, you want to get an older guy who has more injury stuff and isn't secured long term.
And by the way, who wants 2 more years at $60 million after he gets traded too. So, So all right. So a couple other things. There's been a lot of, and we've talked a lot about the idea of the Sixers trading back. It felt like what they were going to do, but if there's not a team that's desperate for Ace Bailey, I wonder if that's going to happen. What do you think the odds of the Sixers trading back at this point are?
So I think, like you said, it wouldn't necessarily be for Ace. I think if there's a team that just, at the end of the day, they wake up next Wednesday morning and they think to themselves, we need VJ Edgecombe, that's probably the best chance, I think. And the one team I've heard all along to really monitor for that has been Washington, picking number 6. I don't know how aggressive the Wizards will ultimately get to do that, but that was kind of the one scenario that I've heard all along that I believe to be true, that I've kept in my back pocket thinking, let's be prepared for this. But outside of that, at this point in time, I am starting to think it's far more likely that Philly stays pat. And I know from talking to a couple people amongst those teams right after Philly, they're starting to operate and conduct their business as if the Sixers will stay at 3 and most likely take Edgecombe as well. So that's where I'm at right now. But I do think with Philly, with Charlotte, even down to Toronto and Houston and others in the lottery, I think a lot of this trade stuff is going to potentially really come down to the wire when they're on the clock and how the order really starts to shake out.
Jake, I find the insider game so fascinating. Like I think it's so like cool actually. Like how hard is this time of the year trying to decipher what's real, what's not? Are you being used? Like take us inside this last week up until the NBA draft.
Yeah, to be honest, and this is probably a bad thing to say to like shoot out the majesty of what we do. The draft is honestly the easiest time of year because there's so many people involved. There are, college coaches and college graduate assistants and the trainer from the agency and the intern at the agency and the actual agent, and certain people played for Team USA. So there's contacts there, and they played in an AAU program, and that coach is involved. And then every single team, everyone picking behind Philly, for example, knows that I could potentially be on WIP talking about the Sixers. And they're like, what's Philly up to? And then you talk to those teams, and then you talk to the teams below them and the teams below them. Everyone's trying to hack this order this year, 1 through 59. It's not like the trade deadline or free agency where, for example, the mid-level market right now is kind of all the rage, right? And we're trying to pinpoint, which centers are going to go to these spots. Like, one team just might decide, oh, this trade came about and we're actually not in the mid-level market anymore. And the thing you were chasing just disappears. With the draft, there is going to be a 1 through 59. And everyone who is remotely tied to the NBA is trying to figure it out. So you kind of can help everyone that you are friendly with, have rapport with, help them do their jobs and vice versa. And it is almost like you're putting together a puzzle and someone like brings you a corner piece from somewhere else. And then that helps start to piece together these other things. So the draft, I think, is maybe the easiest time to triangulate all this stuff. But to your question, there is, because all those people are involved, there is more information than there is at any other time. So it does take some BS meter stuff to be able to, suss out what's real. But I do think I have enough people that I trust that are actually like in the room where it's happening to be able to suss out some of the things that I don't necessarily buy.
Last thing, Jake, we did hear some rumors about the Sixers potentially trading up to 2. Anything on that, or is that dead? That always felt like a long shot to me.
It always felt like a long shot to me too. I'm sure they tried in earnest, but in the very beginning, once the lottery broke, I think there was some, real initial skepticism that Dylan Harper would fit next to Castle and De'Aaron Fox. But after that initial kind of shock, there's been nothing but direct word, I'd say, that Dylan Harper expects to go to San Antonio number 2, and San Antonio expects to draft Dylan Harper.
All right, there he is, Jake Fischer, the People's Insider. You can go subscribe to his stuff with Mark Stein. Can they go to steinline.com? Does that work too, or is it
markstein.substack.com? I don't know anything else. Yeah.
There it is, markstein.substack.com. Thank you again, Jake.